to give us a quorum, and we'll take roll then. Travis, you got it.
Senator, Chairman is going to propose, I believe you're starting with Senate Bill 741, and you can proceed when you're ready, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the, and members of the committee, for the record, I'm Mike Cierpiot from the 8th Senate District. Today, first, I'm presenting Senate Bill 741. Currently, the definition of a large water public utility is using a threshold of more than 8,000 customer connections. Utilities meeting this definition are allowed to use a fair market value assessment of the water utility property during acquisitions. The purpose of this statute is to allow large public utilities to obtain struggling systems to provide more efficient critical infrastructure operations, which is necessary to offer long-term improvements to communities. However, there is ambiguity, on whether the 8,000 threshold counts water and wastewater customers separately or combined. Recently, during an acquisition case, the PSC interpreted the law to require utilities to count water and wastewater separately. This bill would clarify the statute so that the large water public utility designation would apply to any water public utility in Missouri that has more than 8,000 meters, wastewater, or combined water wastewater customers. The language would have no other impact beyond this change and would not impact customers. The change does not give the utility the ability to change rates without PSC approval based on actual investments. This bill also contains one other provision from Missouri American Water. This provision would set a time limit of 6 months on the PSC when considering an application by a large water public utility to approve an acquisition of 1,000 or fewer water customers or 1,000 or fewer wastewater customers. We will have to change this language in committee sub when we bring this to a vote. It was agreed on last year, but the wrong language was included in the bill. It will read, for any acquisition with an appraised value of $5 million or less, such decision shall be issued within 6 months from the submission of the application by the large public water utility to acquire the small utility. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I think there's some people that will speak on this.
Does any senator have questions for the chairman on his bill? Senator Mosley, go ahead.
Is there any issue with the current annual testing for fire hydrants?
Pardon me?
Is there an issue with current annual testing of fire hydrants?
That will be on Senate Bill 740, which we will do
the wrong
next.
one. So you're on
Okay.
741. Okay. Which bill?
741.
Oh, okay.
I took them out of order because 741 is actually in 740, and that
Back
way.
to you.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, first witness in support of Senate Bill 741. Please step forward. Please leave a witness form for our records. Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon. David Woodsmall from Confluence River Utility Operating Company, testifying in support of Senate Bill 741. Since the same provisions are in 740, my comments will be the same, so I won't be repeating myself. Confluence River is the Missouri operating affiliate of Central States Water Resources. Confluence Rivers now owns and operates 76 water and wastewater systems in the state of Missouri. I agree with everything the sponsor said and applaud the chairman for bringing this. There's another provision in that bill. The General Assembly enacted a mechanism in 2021 that provides for a mechanism called a WSIRA that allows for a surcharge for capital cost. The same vague concept about the number of customers you need in order to use that applies to that piece of legislation. So this bill would also clarify that. Again, Confluence Rivers applauds the chairman for bringing this to you. This legislation is a win for all parties. It is a win for customers that will now be confident in the water and wastewater service that they are receiving. Pathogens will no longer be put into the water because those systems will be bought. It is a win for the environment because it's going to clean up discharge, and it's a win for utilities that now can go about the business of buying and fixing these small systems. So it's a win-win-win, and we applaud the chairman for bringing this. As I said, my comments on SB 741 also apply to those same provisions that are in SB 740. So I would support that bill as well, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Woodsmall? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Further support for Senate Bill 741. Just a second, we're gonna take a quorum call really quick since we have a quorum now. Madam Secretary, would you mind calling the roll?
Senator Cierpiot. Fitzwater. Bean. Bernsketter. Brown. Esslinger. May. McCreary. Mosley.
Here.
Thompson Raider. Trent.
Quorum being established, we are officially in committee. So, Senator, your next witness, thank you for joining us. You can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Kid Franklin. I represent Missouri American Water. And we do, same with the previous speaker, we support this measure on both bills, 740 and 741. We thank the chairman for his leadership on this. Having sat with some of these local community leaders, you know, they really are trying to do the best that they can. And so I think this would help them really to do the best job that they can to get the needs that they have for these small systems. And so with that, if there's any other questions, again, thank Mr. Chairman for his leadership on this bill, but be happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Further support?
Mr. Chairman, David Wynn here on behalf of Liberty Utilities. Want to go on record in support of legislation. Appreciate the previous two witnesses, the sponsor, and the committee's time.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Further support? Please also make sure you fill out witness forms and leave them for our records. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Kara Cortes on behalf of the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, also in support again this year on this. It is in our policy agenda for many, many years that we want to make sure that all businesses and residents have access to reliable, affordable, and safe water and wastewater systems. Obviously, water and wastewater are vital for businesses to operate, especially manufacturers who utilize water in the manufacturing of goods. So for these reasons, we are back this year to support this bill.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Further support?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Brent Stewart, recently out of retirement from the electric co-ops. I'm here today on behalf of the Missouri Energy Development Association to go on record in support of Senate Bill 740.
Questions? Welcome out of retirement. Didn't last very long. Seeing none.
I noticed that.
Further support for Senate Bill 741. Anybody here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 741? Anybody here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 741. Senator, Chairman, you're welcome to present Senate Bill 740 at your convenience.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I'm Mike Cierpiot from the 8th. Senate Bill 740 is an omnibus bill. It's a utility bill that contains a combination of bills that we not only heard last year, but we passed out of this committee. The components of this bill actually made it to the Senate floor for debate in the last few days of session, but as we all know, it fell apart and never came to a vote. Page 1, this bill allows the trustees of both common and reorganized common sewer districts to be paid up to $100 per meeting, but not for more than 2 meetings per calendar month by the district for their service. This is not a requirement, and the board would need to approve the fee. This simply allows them to consider it. The stipend would provide an incentive for people to volunteer for these boards. Currently, water districts may pay up to $100 per meeting, organized sewer districts up to $50 per meeting, and reorganized sewer districts up to nothing. They cannot pay anything for a meeting. On page 8 is the bill we just heard, which was 741, and that water language, I will not restate that. Page 12 has got the third component, deals with renewable energy standard. When voters passed the renewable energy standard in 2008, large commercial and industrial customers were not voluntarily buying renewables to meet their company's clean energy goals. Today is a very different story. Hundreds of companies ranging from banks to large manufacturers and infrastructure companies, as well as data centers, have clean and renewable energy goals. They are voluntarily buying large amounts of renewable energy to meet these goals. The problem lies if a state has a renewable energy standard that doesn't allow for utilities or the state to factor in a company's voluntary renewable purchases to support their own operations. It leads to a situation where the utilities are over-purchasing renewables for the renewable energy standard, which means customers are paying more than they need to the utility to comply with the RES. This language is a technical change to the RES that allows the state to factor in the voluntary large-scale renewable energy purchases made by commercial and industrial customers, so the utility doesn't have to purchase renewables to cover the customer load twice with the renewables. These large customers that buy renewables on their own are still paying for all the important things that keep Missouri's grid reliable and stable. Additional benefit for average customers is the fact that the additional load required for these customers won't increase the renewable requirements that are part of the renewable energy standard, saving customers millions of dollars. That's Section 386 020, page 29, that exempts any tariff of at least 80 megawatts from an additional tariffs associated with securitization. This language is still being negotiated and may not remain. I want to make sure we understand that. There is a part of this bill that says that as investor-owned utilities, power companies, securitize some of their assets, this language says that these large companies using over 80 megawatts will not be part of that. We're going to change that, and I'll have further information when we bring this up for a vote later on. Page 21, the fourth component is an economic development rate for gas companies. The economic development rate is a tool currently permitted and used by electric corporations to help local communities attract new businesses and support the expansion of existing businesses when they will be large customers of electricity. This is used as part of a larger community package to compete for businesses and jobs. The hallmark of the EDR is to provide a discount for up to 4 years to new industrial users or industrial users that substantially expand its footprint. Page 33 is the fifth component. It exempts the PSC from the OA hiring process when hiring a financial advisor for a securitization rate case because the PSC only has 215 days to decide these cases, and the OA hiring process can take 12 to 18 months. It requires that the PSC policies and procedures for hiring be available to the public, and that any use of that process in a securitization rate case be part of the public record of those rate cases in an attempt to insert some transparency to this process. And last, page 60, the last component would allow utilities to schedule hydrant tests instead of annual inspections being required. This would allow them to the ability to build in the cost over a longer period of time, thus keeping them from needing to raise rates for the customers, matching what large systems do today. When hydrant testing becomes scheduled, they can maintain their current ISO rating, and this gives them the flexibility to schedule a hydrant test in alignment with their mandated flushing program, which would decrease wastewater. This only applies to small systems. The existing law exempts systems over 30,000 customers. Again, all these concepts were in individual bills last year that passed through this committee. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. There'll also be several people from the industries coming up to speak.
Any questions for the senator? Senator Mosley, Senator McCreary, you guys to battle for it. Senator McCreary, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. She has seniority, so I wanted to try to be respectful of that. All right, so the question I have is I'm trying to understand what industries or companies, what are some of the big industries that would be able to benefit from that kind of discount for gas or electric bills? It's such a big amount. I'm wondering what you're getting at with that.
Well, if you remember, in the electrical world, they have a steel producer now, I think down in Sedalia, down in that area, that is now producing steel. Was it 80 megawatts, I think, was what they needed, or 100 megawatts? It was a big user, and this allows them to give them a better rate for a short period of time. And gas is the same way, I think. I don't know, I should have this in my head, but I don't have how many 1,000 cubic feet they must use. But that's the intent, is to partner with the local community and allow them to make that part of the economic development package.
So it would be it's not a aluminum smelter? I can't remember the specifics of
Well,
what
aluminum smelter uses electricity a lot. It'd be somebody who uses a lot of gas, which is fertilizer, people making fertilizer and a whole host of things that I just don't know.
So
off the
like
top of my
a
head.
fertilizer industry is one example. It's
right.
just such a big amount. I'm wondering if this is being created for something specific that I'm not seeing.
I bet you somebody will visit you in your office pretty
Well,
soon.
that would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my concern, and it's nothing that you guys haven't heard from me before, is when you're giving special rates to one class or one industry or one business, then whose energy bills are going to increase to pay for that? And that's my concern.
Well, what I understood, because I asked that same question, because I don't want my, well, I can't say grandparents anymore. I'm too old. I don't want my kids to be paying a gas bill that's subsidizing a big user.
Right.
The way I understand this, all the costs are recovered, so that's not the issue. And in fact, on days when we have extraordinarily cold weather, like we've had in the past, typically those users are also the first ones shut down, so your homes are still heated. So.
And is that in the, like, where is that? Is that in the PSC rules, or how do I know that?
I don't know if it's PSC or just, I just know that they have an order of shutdowns, whether it's power or gas, so that where people live, the homes, businesses, hospitals are the last ones to be impacted by that stuff. Again, I'm sure somebody will let you know where that is written, but it is.
I'd like to understand that
I
more,
understand.
and then also like the impact on rates for other customer classes. You know, we're here to represent
Absolutely.
our constituents, or who are the residential class, basically.
Yeah, I would be a little bit hard pressed to support something that was giving the big guys a break and the little guys are paying for it.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Mosley, you have questions?
This might be back to the other bill, but as far as the application process, can you explain the application process? I don't know, this might be going back to the other bill. Automatic approval,
Are we talking about fire hydrants again, testing fire
probably
hydrants?
going back to the other bill that I missed. Okay. Is there going to be an automatic approval for the applications?
For
For
the small water companies when they're being purchased, is that what
right.
it has to go through the PSC, but they have a time, they can also extend that if they come up with a reason why they need it extended.
Can you explain the application process of how it's being changed, what is being changed to?
On
What
the,
the original is that what you're trying to change, is the application process?
what we're trying to change is right now
One
that
of
there is, the PSC has ruled that, we're talking about the 8,000 water customers versus 4,000 water customers, wastewater and supply line. Right now, the way I understand it, the PSC has ruled that it only applies if it's 8,000 or more. We're trying to say that it's actually 8,000 in total, so it could be 4,000 wastewater, 4,000 supply line, and so it reduces it. And this is mostly for when these large companies are purchasing small companies. Typically, these small companies don't have the funds to update either the wastewater side or the supply side, and so they're being bought out. So the bigger companies have the assets and the capital to upgrade the systems. That's many times it's at the request of the PSC to help somebody out, to get somebody off their own books. I don't know that answered anything you asked, but
I'll probably come to your office as well.
okay, that'd be fine. Thank you.
Further questions for the sponsor? Seeing none. Who is here to test, somebody in support of Senate Bill 740? Anybody? Come on forward if you're here to support. Just go ahead and step up. Proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Josh Youngblood with Missouri Public Utility Alliance, testifying in support of Bill 740, specifically on the hydrants. We want to make sure that the municipal members that are under that 30,000 threshold still have the flexibility to schedule their testing for those hydrants out in accordance with the National Fire Code and maintaining their ISO rating. With that, answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here in support?
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Larry Ploy, Spire, Missouri Natural Gas. I wanted to address some of the issues that may have been raised regarding the discounted gas rates. First of all, appreciate the sponsor bringing this bill back up. I think it was part of some legislation last year. The opportunity here is to help the economic development efforts in the state, job retention, job expansion. At Spire, we have used a provision in our tariffs already similarly for several other companies. And to address Senator McCurry's questions, when you're looking at the lower threshold, 135,000 CCF a year, you're typically talking about, smaller corporate campuses, a prison, casinos, some schools, larger hotels. When you get into the larger side, as they mentioned, you're looking at industrial, you're looking at manufacturing processes, luxury hotels, college campuses, sewer treatment plants, and the like. So that's kind of some examples of what would qualify there. Also, in the language of the bill, I think that you raised the question about the impact on other customers, and I think on line, I got to get these out here. Sorry. On page 23, starting on line 55, it discusses the fact that these customers cannot sell below cost. This cannot be below cost in terms of variable costs, so it does not have a negative impact on the rest of your customer base. And just to kind of clarify for folks who have heard these conversations before, if a customer would qualify for these economic development rates in conjunction with other packages, nothing happens to the existing rates of customers until you go to a next rate case. And then it's all factors that are considered and brought forth, and then reallocation of costs based on customer class. So to give you an answer about what comes forward and what doesn't come forward in that sausage-making process, and typically those are negotiated decisions. But again, they cannot have a negative impact or be sold below cost. One other thing that differentiates us in the natural gas world from the electric world, in that the upstream gas is a competitive market. So in a lot of cases, Spire, Liberty, Summit, we are just the Uber driver, if you will. We pick the gas up and make sure it gets to the end location. And so it only involves those volumetric parts of that rate, not anything else like your customer charge would probably be excluded the way I read this bill. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for this witness? Senator McCurry, go ahead.
Thank you. So it sounds like Spire's been able to offer discounts to large users before. So why do we need this legislation now?
I think it's because some of the other gas companies don't have this mechanism, and so it just kind of makes it consistent across the footprint for the regulated natural gas utilities.
Okay. And then, so how often does Spire go in for a full rate case?
Because we have a mechanism that requires us to, it's roughly every 3.5 years because of our infrastructure replacement program, if not sooner.
Okay. I hear what you're saying about other rate classes not being impacted, but it's basically just like a honeymoon period that will end once a rate case is decided. So, you can make a deal for a special rate for a large industry or a large user. Our constituents aren't impacted for a while, but eventually they will be. So,
if I understand your point made, I guess I would also have to say that in a situation where you can't adjust your rates and you offer a customer discount, there's also a decreased revenue stream to the utility in that interim period to the rate case. And then all things are set again in a sausage making is not a good analogy, but all factors are considered and then a decision is made as to what that rate impact is moving forward for the next 3.5 years in our case.
okay. Thank you.
Further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, support.
Mr. Chairman, David Winton here on behalf of, David Winton here on behalf of Summit Utilities and Liberty Utilities. Want to go on record and support the legislation. So we also support the discount rate provision centers, and just very briefly, so the idea that more gas would be flowing through the pipe actually reduces costs to all the consumers over time. So this idea of kind of having a mirror language to what the electrics do today gives us the ability to be able to discount to a consumer that's coming online that's going to essentially be putting more gas through the same pipe that we have currently. And so we give them a discount to help them economically develop whatever that project is, whether it's a farm or as the previous witness talked about, it could be any kind of small business or medium-sized business. And over time, that gas coming through the line, it actually reduces the rates to everybody else. So we essentially pass along the reduction to the person that's bringing that additional gas online. But once that's done, that economy of scale goes into the rate base, which is why this is a positive for not just the community, the utility, and the large organization or medium-sized organizations, but also the entire rate base, because it spreads across those costs to a larger group. And so that's why we are very supportive of this. We could reduce rates right now. So if somebody came in and wanted a reduction in rates, but the way these tariffs run is we would absorb the reduction in revenue that comes along with the reduction in rate, and any savings that's achieved through that economy of scale would also be passed along to the consumer. So we basically lose money on the front end, and all that savings goes to them. All this does is it says nobody gets any savings except the person bringing those jobs, and at the end of that 4-year period, then all the consumers get that savings within the rate case or that period of time.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Further support?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Emily Piantek, and I'm here to represent Renew Missouri, which is a 501c3 organization that promotes renewable energy and energy efficiency policy in the state of Missouri. We're here to support the bill, but we would also urge this body to expand the language so that the concept relating to renewable energy credits, or RECs, can be applied more broadly to businesses throughout Missouri. For a long time, it made sense for utility companies to retain these credits because they were the only parties with a vested interest in them, but now industrial and commercial customers are becoming more and more connected to renewable energy. Companies have sustainability goals, shareholders are demanding that businesses are investing in the clean energy future, and corporations are even selecting locations for their facilities where renewable energy access is available to them. While this legislation targets specific customers on the western side of the state, Renew Missouri sees the larger benefit of Senate Bill 740, offering large-scale customers the ability to retain RECs for the energy produced at their behest is yet another opportunity to attract business to Missouri. So with that being said, yes, we'd like to support the bill, but we would also encourage expanding the concept of RECs more broadly. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Yikes. Godfather theme, I think, going on here. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else here in support?
Don't argue with that.
Senate Bill 740. Yeah, it's quite an exit strategy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Fred Dreiling today representing City Utilities of Springfield. We would like to go on record in support specifically of the fire hydrant legislation. Although it doesn't impact city utilities directly, it does impact some of the smaller utilities throughout the state. We're very appreciative of this issue being brought forward.
Any questions for Mr. Dreiling?
Thank you.
Seeing none. Further support?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. John Hensley, registered lobbyist for the Missouri Natural Gas Association. In support of the economic development rate portion of this bill, natural gas companies want to be part of economic development in Missouri, and we think that this bill goes a long way to providing growth opportunities in that regard. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Further in support?
Good afternoon again. Brent Stewart on behalf of the Missouri Energy Development Association. MEDA would like to go on record in support of the bill.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else to testify in favor? Senate Bill 740.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Zach Monroe on behalf of Ameren, Missouri, here to support the natural gas economic development rate.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Philip Arnzen with the Missouri Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we'd like to go on the record in support, specifically the water and wastewater provision and the economic development gas portion.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Jason Clint with Evergy. We're different from Ameren. We don't have natural gas, so I don't have any comments on that portion of the bill. I do want to talk just very briefly. The senator did a good job summarizing the securitization language that's in there and our concerns with that. So while we are supportive of this bill and the tariff in general, we do have concerns the securitization language to make sure that that only applies to generation securitization and not the other types of securitization that could come down the line. We're working with the with parties on that and hope to have updated language in the near term.
Questions, Mr. Clint? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else here to testify in favor of Senate Bill 740?
I'm Amy Blunt on behalf of Meta Platforms. We are supportive of this bill, particularly the advanced renewable buyer language, which the senator explained very well. But Facebook is building the new data center. It's a huge infrastructure investment in the state of Missouri, and this is an important part of making that a feasible, an economically feasible project, and also of attracting new large-scale users like data centers to the state.
Great. Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in support of Senate Bill 740? Anybody here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 740? Please fill out a witness form and leave it for our records. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is John Kaufman. I'm here today on behalf of the Consumers Council of Missouri, and my interest is for residential customer of regulated industries, and particularly customers who struggle. There are hundreds of thousands of customers who would be impacted by this legislation who currently cannot afford to pay their utility bills as they are. And my concern is with provisions of this bill that would add additional cost to the bills of homeowners, residents, voters that have no other choice. They're captive to monopoly utility customers. So let me first talk about the economic development portions of the bill. Despite what you heard from Laclede just earlier, this legislation would very clearly pass the cost of these discounts on to small business and residential utility ratepayers. If you look at page 25 or 24 of the legislation, you'll see in black and white here that the impact of the discounts provided by this section shall be allocated to all the other gas companies' customers. And it is true that the requirement would require a positive contribution to fixed costs, but that does not mean there would be no subsidy. In fact, there would be a significant subsidy, and one that would be felt by the smallest and most vulnerable customers that you represent in your districts. So we definitely have concern about the natural gas economic development part of the bill. This language could be made better. And I also, because there may be folks here that remember the Noranda aluminum days, that there is an argument to be made with large electric customers that you, for instance, and just oversimplify, say you have a power plant and you're able to then spread, you're adding more revenues that can then spread out the cost of that to your customers. So there's an offset to other customer classes with electric. Not so with natural gas, because natural gas simply passes through. The commodity that you receive is just a pass-through of natural gas. So you don't quite have that offset benefit to the other customers with natural gas. And so I would ask that you take a close look at that, particularly the language on page 24 of the bill. We also have concern about the I guess you could say economic development or special deals for very large electric customers regarding securitization. As you know, the Public Service Commission has taken up the Rush Island closure, and we're talking there in that case now about securitization, and there's going to be significant costs that customers will not be able to avoid related to legislation that this body passed a few years ago. in that there was not this kind of exception when that whole thing was debated. And my concern with these 80 megawatts, and I'm not really sure what we're talking about that, if it's big data farm or some other industry, there may be some way to do it, and I'm glad that, to hear that the sponsor is going to be taking a look at that legislation. Frankly, if you're looking at exempting customers, I would ask that you consider an exemption for low-income customers or residential customers from the securitization cost. But if we are going to be adding additional cost when we shut down these coal plants, that those costs should be, more fairly distributed around and not only be borne by the smallest of customers. And that's my testimony. And so we have those concerns about the bill. Also, one other bit is, and it's not as big a concern, but from a consumer perspective, we don't believe that the WSIRA surcharge is that friendly to consumers. What began originally as the infrastructure replacement surcharge for pipes that were prone to breaks and very specific types of vintages of pipes has now been expanded through the WSIRA that was passed a few years ago. Now, what Missouri American Water does is a more of a wholesale approach, which involves replacing pipes, some of which don't need to be replaced, just to kind of increase the rate base for the utility. And so, to the extent that this bill would then allow smaller utilities to also do that kind of wholesale replacement, we have a concern. And that's all I have.
Questions for this witness? Senator McCreary, go ahead.
Thank you. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, I did not grasp what you were saying about that there's no offset for high usage for natural gas like electricity. So can you back up and...
There was a lot of complicated analysis done by the Public Service Commission and debated in the legislature too with Noranda, which was an extremely large electric provider. But the idea is that when you have assets that are commonly paid for by all the customers, say a power plant, you're able to then, if you can increase the amount of revenue that you're bringing in, that sort of then reduces the amount that everybody has to pay to a certain degree. So you're paying for everything, the wires and the transformers all the way up to the power plant. With natural gas, you have basically pipes. So Laclede is really just a pass-through pipes company, and those pipes remain the same. It's not as if you could do a variety of calculations, but giving a discount to one customer isn't going to somehow increase the amount of revenue for let's say a residential customer. So I think it's concerning. Perhaps there could be some other alternative language suggested, but as it's written now, that basically the revenues are then the discount is then taken into effect, and then whatever the utility is discounted, that gets passed on to all the other customers, including small business customers and other large customers that are not participating in the program. So it is a rate increase for all the other customers.
Okay. That's helpful. And I have one more question, and then I'll let this. And then you were talking about the securitization part of the bill. Mm-hmm. On my copy of the bill, it's on page 29. So I think what I hear you saying is that a large load of at least 80 megawatts that they would be exempt from participating in securitization. So that means if they're exempt from that, like it has to be borne by other classes. Is that okay?
That's right.
So you're just saying if that 80 megawatts or bigger, like they should have to participate in it as well.
Yes. I mean, I think there are some economic arguments to be made with economic development, some economic development packages. But as these are written, these would definitely be subsidized by other customers.
Okay.
And so I think the committee needs to be aware of that. If you're voting for this, you are voting to pass costs on to other customers.
Okay. Well, and I did hear the chair and the bill sponsor say that we're still working on that. So hopefully we'll figure something out.
It is complicated, but I think there are alternative ways to do it.
Okay. Thank you.
Further questions? Senator May, proceed.
Sorry, I just have this quick clarification. So I don't know if it's a clarification, might be a comment, or you might not have the answer and the bill sponsor may have the answer. So in this essence, this discount that we're giving, why are we giving that discount? What's the necessity of the discount? And, what's the benefit of the discount? I understand. I would love, low gas prices too, but I'm just interested in knowing, what problem are we solving in giving this discount? That's what I need to know.
I can't answer that. I wasn't part of drafting this legislation.
Senator, the intent is just like we do with big power users. This isn't the biggest people, but it's to partner with communities to attract businesses into those communities as part of the package.
Okay.
And Larry, do you have something you want to say further than that?
No, that would be correct. It's part of economic development, job expansion, job retention, and it has to be in cooperation with other incentives.
I could just add one other point in that there are economic development tariffs now that the Public Service Commission have approved, and they go through, an evidentiary process, and there's a lot of different, economic considerations and calculations done. One thing about this legislation is it would mandate it to be done. Another way you could do this is to give the Public Service Commission discretion and let them and their experts analyze whether it's justified and under what conditions.
Further questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 740? Anybody here to testify for informational purposes only? Seeing none, that'll conclude the hearing on Senate Bill 740. And seeing no further business before the committee, I make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second? Having a second, the Committee on Utilities will adjourn.